right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. For those who might be new to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, we're all about bringing science, adventure, exploration, and conservation live into classrooms across North America and beyond. Now that the school year's in full swing, we are now broadcasting 30, 40, even 50 live events a month into classrooms. So one of our favorite things to do when we have the opportunity is to get live into the field. And we've been following a pretty amazing expedition over the last few weeks. We've been connecting with National Geographic Explorer, Cutler. He's an ichthyologist, meaning he studies fish, and his area of specialty is freshwater fish. He is conducting the Ogooue megatransect on the Ogooue River, one of Africa's last wild rivers in Gabon. So we've had a couple connections with him from different parts of the river. We've seen the amazing biodiversity that he's catching, his equipment. Last time we connected, we were in Lope, and now we are heading out to another part of the river. So I'm going to bring Joe into the call here with us. Joe, how you doing?
Great. Hi, Joe, and hi to all the classrooms. It's great to be able to tune in. We're here in Ndjole, Gabon, and you can see the Ogooue River behind me.
All right. Very cool, Joe. We have a great signal today. It's always a little bit dicey along the river, but you said you're kind of near one of the larger kind of settlements on the river. So yeah, tell us a little bit about where you are right now.
So I'm on an island in the middle of the Ogooue River, just a little bit downstream. I'm going to turn around a little bit. You can see the town of Ndjole here behind me. And I'm on a big sandbank just behind this little bit of forest here is a big island in the middle of the river. And on the tail end of the island, the downstream end, we've got this beautiful sandbank. And so we've decided to arrange our camp here. You can see our tents. This is where we cook. And this is our boat, which has carried us all the way down the river from Franceville to here. We've had about a month out on the water. And we've covered probably about 2/3 of the distance across Gabon already. And it's been incredible to see how the river has changed along our transect of the river. So I'm really excited to be able to reconnect and share a little bit about what we've seen recently and kind of what we're up to. So the Ogooue River is the 4th largest river in Africa in terms of the amount of water that flows out of it. More water flows out of the Ogooue than flows out of the Nile. But for some reason, and it may be because it's poorly explored, very few people know the Ogooue River. But the Ogooue is one of the most pristine, large tropical rivers in the world. There are about 4 inhabitants per square kilometer on the entire watershed. So it is really very minimally populated. This is one of the biggest towns on the Ogooue, and it's still just a town. So it's really been cool to be able to paddle down the river, see everything that's out there, and also do sampling, sample the fishes, look at the biodiversity as we've been descending. And it's been a really remarkable week since our last connection. So I'm really excited to share a little bit of the update.
All right. Very cool. I love seeing that campsite. I can just picture, making your way down the river, choosing a campsite, and then just doing some sampling. So, Joe, tell us a little bit about how you sample for these species.
Yeah. So actually, just after we're finished with this call, I've set up our seine net, and we're going to go right into this zone where it's a little bit shallow and sandy, and we're going to be pulling the seine net here. And we're gonna seine up everything that we can catch along this bank here, basically all the way down to where the raft is situated. And we're gonna do 2 rounds of sampling, one just before sundown and one just after nightfall. And so that's gonna give us the maximum amount of species diversity for fishes. We're gonna see the daytime fishes and we're gonna see the nighttime fishes. And what's been really cool is from the start down to where we are now, we've seen the species composition, the types of fish that we're catching change at almost every site. And it's been really dramatic over the last week. So Lope, where we connected from last time, is still a few hundred kilometers upstream from where we are today. And in between Lope and here, there are 10 big rapids, the last big rapids on the Ogooue. Where we are now, we've already passed all of the rapids. And from here all the way to the ocean is smooth water, big water. It's almost like a lake. And within a week, we're going to reach the Ogooue Delta, which is about 200 kilometers long. And at that point, we're going to be paddling the whole time to make our way downstream, because at that point, the Ogooue hardly flows at all. It's really tidally influenced, and there's a bunch of big lakes on the sides that branch off the Ogooue. It forms a massive delta, which is a Ramsar site, which is a designation of wetland of international importance. So once we get down into the Bas Ogooue, the lower Ogooue, I'm expecting it to be really cool, really diverse, and I'm expecting that we're going to see some incredible fish as well. So when we left Lope, actually the day we left, we paddled a little ways downstream and we set up our camp. And as we're setting up our camp and starting to cook dinner, we hear something in the forest across the river. And it sounds like trees falling and branches breaking. And eventually we figured out that there was a huge female forest elephant going out to have her dinner as well. So we're sitting there cooking our dinner on the banks of the river, and there's a forest elephant breaking down trees having her dinner as well. And she stayed with us for probably 2 or 3 hours. We could hear her all night long, just kind of tromping through the bush. And you can see I took this photograph through a binocular, and right in the center, that little tiny gray dot is probably a 2,000, 3,000 pound elephant having her dinner. So that was really exciting for us. It's the first forest elephant that we've seen from the river on this expedition. And what's really exciting about the forest elephants, they're the most rare species of elephant in the whole world. And 90% of the forest elephants live here in Gabon. So if the forest elephant is to be protected, it's got to be done here in Gabon. So we're really happy to see that big, healthy female having her dinner.
All right, very cool. So Joe, you have a couple other little videos and images that you shared, including one where you were catching quite a big fish. So maybe I should play that little video and then we can show some of those pictures. You can tell us a little bit about that experience.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Hopefully I picked the right one here.
Fish on.
Ele é forte.
Yeah, it's not a, whoa. That's not a bad fish.
Ugh, why couldn't you caught him earlier when the lighting was better?
I agree.
So you'll just get your silhouette.
Color. I'm gonna go kind of up this way.
Okay.
Try to get it away from the other.
Oh, the other line.
Yeah.
Super, Joe. Là, il est gros quand tu veux.
Ouais, je crois que c'est pas un petit poisson.
Coptodon, je confirme.
Non, 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 non.
J'aime bien cette espèce-là.
All right, Joe, we lost a little bit of the story. You were on mute. But I do have those pictures to share. If you want to tell us a little bit more, let me bring that in.
Yeah. So this is that fish that took me so long to reel in. It is a snapper. It's a Guinea snapper. And the thing that's really shocking about this is snapper are typically thought of as marine fishes. But to catch one here all the way upriver at Ndjole was really exciting for me. And what was awesome was we cast out the poles. That that fish ate that bait almost immediately, put up this big, great fight. And as it's coming to the beach, I'm shouting to my team, "Oh, it's a snapper, it's a snapper." And everybody's shouting and screaming and saying, "Wow, it's a snapper," because people don't usually catch snapper here. And so to see a fish like that, that's clearly migrating all the way from the ocean up to Ndjole, was really exciting for us. And then probably a couple hours after that, I hooked into another fish. And then again, a third fish. And so here in this photograph, that shows the first snapper and what's called a dorade grise. It's actually a large grunt, if you can believe it. And both these fish are predators that swim up the Ogooue River. And we don't really know what they do here. Do they reproduce, or are they just in the river to uh, to feed? So it was really exciting to catch these two big, nice fish yesterday. And then this morning, we caught an absolute monster. And this is one of the biggest fish I've ever seen come out of the Ogooue. This is another snapper, and that fish probably weighs at least 30 pounds. And it was truly just a beefy, beefy fish. And so I took this fish. We've got a few friends here in Ndjole, and I said, okay, I'm going to bring this fish over and give it as a gift to my friends. And so when we were walking through town carrying this giant fish, everybody in town is just saying, "Wow, wow, what a monster. Where did you catch that whale? That thing is humongous." Because there aren't very many people who fish here in Ndjole. So for them to see such a huge fish that came right from the Ogooue River in front of their town, I think was really shocking, and truly one of the biggest fish I've ever seen come out of the Ogooue River. I felt pretty lucky that we caught this fish on this expedition. One
Yeah.
thing that's really exciting about, go ahead, Joe.
No, Joe, tell us what's exciting. Go ahead.
One of the things that was really remarkable when I was cleaning this fish, so that I could give it nice and clean and well prepared to our friends, I actually found eggs inside of this fish, which tells me that this species may actually breed in fresh water. This is the first evidence we have of snappers breeding in the Ogooue River, and it's really important information if we're thinking about conservation of this river. So one of the things that we've been doing on the descent of the Ogooue River is we've been sampling proposed dam sites. Thus far, we've sampled 14 proposed dam sites on the main stem Ogooue. And one of our questions was, are these proposed dams going to block migratory corridors for marine and other migratory fishes? And this individual with eggs in its belly, that tells me that if that next dam at the Chutes de Zamata is built, that may actually block the migratory corridor for these red snapper, which are really a commercially important fish here in Gabon. So I think that that's really critical. We took samples of the eggs to prove that they were there, and we also extracted the ear bones of the fish, the otolith, so that we could do stable isotope analysis to see whether or not this fish was bred in fresh water and how many times it's gone between the ocean and fresh waters throughout its lifetime. So we're collecting really critical baseline data on the biodiversity of commercially important species here in Gabon. And I really hope that this is going to help inform and push conservation of freshwaters here in Gabon. So I thought it was absolutely just a really cool thing to find. And it's the first evidence ever. So that goes to show how little we know even about the big fish here in the Ogooue.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. Very cool. And it's really proves, the concept of what you're doing is sampling these dam sites and showing not only the biodiversity, but, why it's important that this river remains open and free and wild so that fish can move and migrate.
Yeah, what's amazing is when we talk to the local fishermen, they say they catch snapper all the way up at Boué. And that's way, way upstream of Lope even. So that's, probably a 500 kilometer, 600 kilometer migration up the Ogooue River. So if any of the proposed dam sites between here and Boué are actually constructed and made into dams, we may lose those giant snapper out of the Ogooue River, which is really critical. And it's such an important species here in Gabon that I think that that may help bring attention to the Ogooue and the importance of protecting it and keeping it a free-flowing river.
Awesome stuff, Joe. I've got a few more videos queued up here, a few drone videos. So why don't we play those? We can talk about those a little bit.
That sounds great.
So here's the first one. Looks like kind of a pullout from the sand spit. So I'll bring that one up.
Joe, am I muted?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So this was at our last site before in Ndjole. And this is the last proposed dam site on the Ogooue, the most downstream proposed dam site. It's at a rapid called Bonga Bonga, and it is at the proposed dam site is called the Chutes des Amata. And it's a really amazing area where there are all these little islands, and the Ogooue splits into 3 different big channels. And you can see from this shot just how enormous the Ogooue River is. We look like little teeny tiny ants in this video. And we didn't even go as high as our drone could go. That goes to show just how massive the Ogooue River is. And you can imagine just how many species of fish are living in this river. There are over 350 described species, but we imagine that there are probably at least 500 fish species found here in the Ogooue. So there's a lot more to discover. And it's a really awesome place to explore, obviously.
All right, here's another little drone clip, Joe.
So this is just upstream of Ndjole, and this is probably one of the most impacted sites that we've seen thus far. So you can see our tiny little raft. And let me assure you, it's not a small raft. Our tiny little raft is just trying to pass in front of this forestry concession where they've got all these pieces of wood stacked up that they've cut out of the forest here. And there's a lot of timber extraction here in the Ogooue drainage. It's actually one of the biggest human impacts on the Ogooue. Here in Ndjole, there are a bunch of forestry concessions. There's also a gold mine. There's also a manganese mine. So this is one of the most heavily impacted areas on the whole Ogooue River. After we left Franceville, we haven't seen anything like that until we got here to Ndjole. And that goes to show just kind of how little impacts there are in most of the Ogooue, but how quickly human impacts can kind of degrade an ecosystem. Because here in Ndjole, I'll tell you, there's more garbage and trash, and the waters, we haven't even been drinking the river water, even though up until now we've been drinking water straight out of the river with no problem. But here in town, we're thinking probably better to drink water that we can get from town, because there's a lot of human impacts here, and it's kind of disappointing. It's honestly kind of sad to see all the scars of human activities here on the Ogooue River around Ndjole.
Yeah, the river's definitely changed a lot since, we've had our couple of events. And it's great, being able to shed some light on these issues. And, it looked like quite a big timber operation that you guys were kind of cruising by.
Man, it's huge, and it's on both sides of the river. But what's amazing is as we passed that site, we actually saw 2 African clawless otters and a giant soft-shell turtle swimming down the Ogooue River. So clearly, some of the biodiversity remains untouched, but the scars on the landscape are really apparent. And when you see a pristine forest where everything is green, and then you see that area that's been clear cut, the red soil running down into the river, and all those trees and all those logs stacked up, ready to be shipped out of the country, it's really kind of shocking.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I'm going to share my screen one more time, Joe. There's a couple more images here. Looks like a beautiful sunset on the river here.
Oh, I'll tell you, the sunsets have just been awesome. And we're transitioning right now. Actually, the rainy season has just begun. You may see that I'm sweating right now. The rainy season's a crazy time here in Gabon. it goes from being pouring rain to being the brightest, hottest sunlight you can imagine. And so today it's been kind of bipolar. It's like pouring rain in the morning, then beating sunlight, and you're all sweaty, and then it pours rain again. And so we've had our last 2 nights sleeping in pouring rain. And I think the rest of our journey is going to be kind of battling the elements with lots of rain, lots of sunburns, and very quick transitions between the two.
And looks like you're finding some other species, not just, oh, actually, there's a little fish in that one too. Very cool.
Yeah, there are giant prawns that live in the Ogooue River. And it may look really big. It's probably 6 or 7 inches long, but they get way bigger than that. These prawns grow to be over a foot long, and they are voracious predators. We will often catch these prawns, and they'll be holding on to a fish. And I've seen these prawns eat a fish that's larger than they are, which is absolutely amazing. And they've got unbelievable pinchers. When you get pinched by those things, they'll break your skin and you will be bleeding. So one of the things that we're also catching and documenting is the invertebrate biodiversity here in the river. We've already seen 2 or 3 different species of shrimp, freshwater snails, African clawless otters, a couple different swimming snake species, the turtles, the otters. It's been really cool to see, even though I love fish, it's really cool to see this other biodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like a few little shots here to wrap up. Little raft shot heading down the river.
Yeah, so this is kind of what a lot of the Ogooue looks like. So our raft is pretty big, but it is dwarfed by the Ogooue River. And so I'm in the back of the raft taking a widescreen shot to try to provide a little bit of context. This is just to try to show how vast the Ogooue River is. And so you can see Megan, our team photographers, rowing. We've got a couple spare paddles and oars on the side. Edward and Zenge, a research technician, is there in the front of the boat, piloting us, telling us if there are rocks or obstacles coming. And we've had some pretty intense rafting since our last call. 10 rapids, including one that was absolutely terrifying. The rapids at Junkville were honestly the second scariest rapid that we've covered this whole time. And it was a long rapid, probably 15 minutes of navigating through terribly turbulent water. And there was one spot where there was a big rock in the middle of the rapids with a whirlpool behind it that was probably 40 feet, maybe 50 feet across. And it was just sucking down into the depths. And so as we're approaching that thing, I've got a GoPro on my head and I'm saying, oh crap, I got to avoid that whirlpool. And thankfully we were able to avoid it on the left and pass downstream. And once we got to the bottom, Edward was like, oh, merci, Joseph, merci, saying, thank you, Joe. Thank you for navigating us through this without having to swim there. Because honestly, I think if you went down that whirlpool, you may not make it out.
All right. Well, glad you missed the whirlpool. We've got one more shot here. Looks like some food.
Yeah. We've been trying our best to eat well. One of the important things when you're on expedition is you got to eat well, or else you're going to feel really tired, frustrated, maybe even angry at times. And so we've been packing tons of food with us, cooking big meals in the morning, big meals in the evening, and just trying to make sure that everybody on our team is well fed. I must admit, I've probably put on a few pounds since we left Franceville, but that's been a great thing. The difficulty is with the humidity, the heat, and the rain here, things don't last very long. So if you bring tomatoes with you, you got 2 days before they start to rot. So we've been very choosy about the food we've been bringing. And so right now in that shot, we're eating fufu corn and tomato sauce, which may not sound too good, but I'll tell you, after a long day of paddling, before you start fishing in the evening, it's really nice to fill your belly.
All right. Looks pretty good, Joe. Well, let's let's give it a go. Let's meet some of our classrooms, because I bet they're going to have some questions about what you've been up to, what's still to come. I'm sure there's lots of questions out there. Those tuning in via YouTube, I can see there's classrooms in Ontario and Chicago, a few other classrooms. Looks like someone in Wyoming saying hi. So lots of groups tuning in there. Let's get some questions coming in the chat sidebar there as well. But for now, let's get to our first live classroom. So we're going to go Mrs. Haynes' group. 5th graders are joining us in North Carolina. Let's bring them in. There they are. How are we doing, North Carolina?
Wait, hi! Introduce yourself and to ask the question.
I'm Atticus, and what kind of bait do y'all use?
What kind of?
Bait.
Bait.
So mostly what we've been using is small fishes. So what I've been doing for fishing is I've got a cast net. And so every evening I go out, I cast net for probably 10, 15 minutes. That's usually enough time to catch a bucket full of fish. And I've been just casting out 2 lines every night with a single hook on each line and using live fresh fish bait. And, you know, I think if I was using earthworms or manioc or even bread, we'd see different fish. But I want to catch the big predators. I want to catch the monsters. And so that's why I've been using a lot of small fishes as bait.
All right, very cool. So we're going to jump to another live classroom here. We've got, oh, the wrong page. There we go. We've got Mr. Taylor's group joining us. Looks like some 9th graders in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Let's bring them into the call. All right, how are we doing, Niagara Falls? I'll have to get you guys to unmute for me.
Hello, hello.
There we go. All right, we're ready for you. Who's got a question?
Yep, we have a question here.
How long do you have left in your expedition?
So, you know, it's really hard to calculate because nobody has done anything like this in 140 years. The last person who did a big Ogooue project was Pierre Sauvignon de Brazza, one of the famous explorers of Africa. So we've been kind of guesstimating how long it's going to take us. I think it's probably about another month before we reach the ocean. And we're way down the river already. But as the current starts dropping and as we reach the delta, the water is going to be moving slower and slower and slower. So I'm thinking probably about another month with our feet wet and our clothes wet, sleeping in tents on sand spits until those sand spits are all flooded as the water rises. So within a couple months, all this sand that you see behind me is going to be underwater. And at that point, we're going to be sleeping in the mud in the forest. So I'm hoping that we'll be out at the coast within a month so that we don't have to spend too many nights sleeping in the mud in the jungle. It's a lot less comfortable than here on the sand.
All right, fair enough. Evelyn wants to know about the language they speak in Gabon.
So the national language is French, but there are over 52 languages spoken on the Ogooue itself. So every town, every village that we've passed, it seems like they speak a different language. And our teammates, so we've got a bunch of Gabonese scientists and researchers and students with us. They all come from different tribes and different clans, and they all speak their own languages, but they all also speak French. So here we do most of our research, most of our work in French. My native tongue is English, so my French is good enough, especially when I'm talking about fish, but I have a terrible accent. So everybody has to bear with me and my funny accent with French. But as long as I'm talking about fish, my French is passable.
All right, very cool. Let's see. Let's bring another classroom in here. We're going to go to Miss Dockery, 5th graders joining us in Mount Airy, North Carolina. Let's pop them in. There they are. Oh, lots of questions. All right. We're ready. Who's got the first one?
How long have you been there?
So we've spent at this point 1 month on the river, but we've been in Gabon for about 2 months because it took some time to prepare and get all the way out to the upper Ogooue. But I started working in Gabon in 2014, and I've been planning this expedition for over 2 years already. So this is something, this dream that I've had has been coming together over a long time. And, honestly, descending the Ogooue has been a lot faster than I expected. So I expected that it would take us several months to paddle the zone that we've done already. Albeit we are trying to move as fast as we can with the rainy season coming. So a month on the water, and I'll tell you, all of your skin starts getting raw just because it's been wet all the time. It feels like I have trench foot. My feet are starting to have these sores and blisters, and my hands have all these little cuts on them, and nothing heals quickly here in the tropics. So a month feels like a long time to be out sleeping on the sand, living out of a raft, and navigating down this river. And we've got at least another month to go.
All right. Well, Joe, you're really selling that field work. It sounds pretty glamorous.
Oh, I'll tell you, it's awesome. Even though we have some difficulties, this has been the experience of a lifetime.
All right, very cool. So I see Mr. Katz was able to join us. His group is joining us in Chicago, and it looks like we can see them. They're all joining from home. And Mr. Katz, if you're able to unmute. Very cool to see all the students joining from home. And then Mr. Katz, you should see an option to unmute. Kind of looks like a microphone with a cross through it, an X. All right, we'll come back their way. It doesn't look like we can talk to them quite right now. I know they're joining in via YouTube as well. So Mr. Katz group, you can send in your questions via YouTube as well. All right, Mrs. Place has a class joining us in Miami-Dade, Florida. Hey, Mrs. Place, can you introduce the class for us? Oh, just unmute for us, Mrs. Place.
So sorry it took us a minute. We are Miss Basulto's class from Coral Reef Elementary School in Miami, Florida. We are burgeoning explorers, and we have a couple of questions. First of all, we've been following you on Instagram, and we are super excited to hear maybe a little bit more about the chimpanzee that came out while you were doing your fishing. And the students were also very concerned about when you had to portage your raft over the dry area. Could you talk a little bit about those two things?
Yeah, I would love to. Let me start with the chimpanzee because that was, I've been working in Central Africa for 10 years now, and I've never had such an awesome experience with a chimpanzee. So I was cast netting this little teeny tiny river with my colleague Edward, and he was going downstream, I was going upstream, and I'm waiting, I'm about waist deep in the water, I've got the cast net in my mouth, getting ready to throw it, and I hear some sounds in the forest. And here, you usually expect that it's going to be either an elephant or a buffalo, both of which are very scary animals when you're in the forest because they have a propensity to charge you. And so I was immediately alerted, oh my gosh, what is coming? Some animal is coming through the forest toward me. And in this clearing, right there on the side of the river, walks this old chimpanzee male. I didn't know that chimpanzees could be silverbacks, but this chimpanzee was totally gray hair all down his back, and he had almost a scarred, old, saggy face. And he walked past this little opening, saw me, and then he walks back out and looks at me. And we had this moment, probably 10 seconds, where we're looking at one another and he's trying to figure out, who is that? What is he doing in the river here? And then he decided, okay, I'm going back up into the forest. And he turned around and walked away. And it was just so exciting. And I'm screaming back to the team, chimpanzee, chimpanzee. And by the time everybody came, he had already disappeared into the forest. So that was absolutely awesome. The other video you asked about was our portage. The only time we've had to portage around a rapid, was at the Chutes de Bouet. And the Chutes de Bouet is a monstrous rapid here on the Ogooue. Probably a 50-foot fall, and it's not a clean fall like Niagara Falls. There are huge rocks in the middle of it, and if you make it down the big fall, there's a huge rapid underneath it. So we took one look at that rapid and said, better to go on the side. But the water level is so low right now that there are no other passages through the rocks there. So we made it probably 100 yards, 100 meters downstream, and then it was totally dry. And so we started looking around. Thankfully, there were a bunch of fishermen there. And so we said, hey, you guys look really strong. Can you help us get this raft down to the bottom of the rapids? And we got 7 guys to drop everything they were doing, come out and give us a hand moving our raft down, portaging our raft down the side of the river. It took us about 3 hours to go about 1 kilometer, maybe 2 kilometers. And so we were just inching along, and all of us were putting all of our effort into dragging this raft across the rocks. And, you know, I was all bruised and battered by the end, and all those guys just went back to their fishing. And so we were really lucky to get that local help. And we were also really lucky to be able to portage that rapid, because I don't know if we would have survived had we tried to take our raft down the main chute. I think that would have been not the smartest choice of the expedition. So we planned a whole day for that portage, and we got it done in about 3 hours, thanks to the help of the people of Bouet. So it was a long 3 hours, very exhausting. You know, you're dragging the raft, which weighs a lot with all the gear, over really slippery rocks and waist deep water. So it was a rough day, but having the help really made it a lot better.
All right. Sounds pretty lucky. We've got a class joining us, Hanover, Ontario, grade 7 and 8 with Mr. Armstrong. So they're kind of tuning in live, and they sent in some good questions about the dam. So I'm going to bring one of them up here. So the first one here was wondering about, there it is, fish ladders. Is there a possibility that if the dams were built, that something like fish ladders might work for the snapper?
You know what? One of the things that's been kind of found, there aren't very many dams here in Gabon. There are only 3. And none of those have fish ladders in them, including dams that were built 60 years ago. So it's really not been a priority here in Gabon to protect the fishes when you build dams. The other thing that's been found, a lot of tropical species don't deal very well with fish ladders. So in some other areas where there are dams in the tropics, they've put in fish ladders, but the migratory fishes can't get up the fish ladders. Salmon are very well adapted for fish ladders because they're used to kind of jumping up rapids naturally. Whereas a lot of the migratory fishes here aren't really big jumpers. So a lot of the fishes that migrate here are catfishes that would never jump up a fish ladder. So, you know, I think that it's better than nothing, but I don't think that it would protect or save every species that migrates here in the Ogooue. So it's something that we've thought about a lot. It's something that a lot of people talk about, but I don't think it's 100% a solution here in Gabon. But it's a Band-Aid. It's better than nothing, but it's not going to solve all the problems for fish migration here in the Ogooue.
All right. Well, that same class in Hanover wants to test your French skills, Joe. I'm going to pop a question here. You should see it at the bottom of the screen. No pressure, but here we go.
OK, on a trouvé à peu près 50 espèces de poissons pendant notre expédition jusqu'à présent. C'est pas toute la diversité de la fleuve Ogooue. Il y a plus que 350 espèces de poissons des eaux douces connues ici dans l'eau douce au Gabon. Mais on imagine qu'il y a au moins 400-500 espèces de poissons sur le fleuve Ogooue lui-même. Donc, vraiment, c'est énorme en termes de biodiversité et c'est super riche. Donc, merci pour la question. On peut discuter, on peut faire le prochain appel tout en français. Pas de souci.
All right. Very good. Good stuff. They so for those who may not have caught what just happened there, was how many types of fish did Joe find? And I think they made it easy for you because you said that your best French is talking about fish. So they should have been more challenging and asked about something else.
Well, you gave me an easy one, so thank you for that.
All right.
We've probably collected about 50 species of fish thus far, but we're just touching the biodiversity. There are over 350 known species of fish here in the Ogooue, and I imagine that there are probably more than 500 if everything was discovered. And we're really only fishing in the big river. If we start to count all the small rivers that come into the Ogooue as well, there'd be a ton of biodiversity.
Okay, so I want to give a few more shout outs, Joe. We've got a class tuning in Calgary, Alberta. We've got Mrs. Hall's class in Mount Airy, North Carolina. And in fact, Miss Hall's class is wondering about those forest elephants. Are they in good shape there? Are they threatened? What's going on with the forest elephant population?
You know, they're definitely in better shape here in Gabon than they are anywhere else in the world. That said, there's a lot of human-wildlife conflict because of elephants here. They are critically protected here by Gabonese law, but everyone in the country complains that elephants destroy farms. And so anybody who's building a farm, they're going to tell you, oh, well, last year my entire farm was destroyed by one elephant. So it's a big issue here in Gabon. How do you still have agriculture and also protect forest elephants? But what we've seen is poaching in all the surrounding countries has really eliminated forest elephants from Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and most of Congo. And so 90% of the remaining forest elephants are here in Gabon because Gabon has a lot of protected areas and pretty good protection of elephants. But it's a hard species to protect because everybody in the village says, you know, they come and destroy our farms, they destroy our crops, they eat all of our food. So what are we going to do? Are we going to go hungry to protect elephants? And unfortunately, there's not really a good way to, you know, pay someone who's lost their farm to a forest elephant and compensate them for their loss. So it's a standing issue, but they're better protected here in Gabon than anywhere else. And the global demand of ivory really is the threat. You know, they're not hunted for their meat. They're hunted for ivory. And none of that ivory is being used here in Gabon. It's all being exported. So don't go out and buy ivory. That's the best thing you can do right now to protect forest elephants.
All right. Well, Joe, we've got Mr. Katz's group in Chicago. I think they've got the mic sorted. How are we doing in Chicago?
All right. Can you guys hear us at all?
Yeah, we gotcha.
All right. Elisa, could you ask your question?
Is recreational fishing allowed in the river? And if so, what impact has it made on it and the water, both the water and the animals?
You know, it's amazing how little fishing there is here on the Ogooue. I think that right now I'm probably the only recreational fisher on the entire Ogooue. There's a lot of artisanal fishing. So small scale fishing, people out in dugout canoes, placing nets or trot lines, which is it's a fishing line that goes to the bottom with a bunch of hooks on it. That said, between Franceville and here, I think we've probably seen maybe 100 fishermen over 600 kilometers of river. But from here all the way to the coast, we're going to see more and more fishing. Especially in the Delta, there's a lot of fishing. But I don't think that that's the big threat here. You know, Gabon's population is so small that, you know, even if everybody was fishing on the Ogooue River, it'd be less pressure than, for example, on the Mekong or on the Congo, just because the population in the Congo and in Southeast Asia is so much more than it is here in Gabon. So, you know, there's very little. It's actually been shocking how little fishing we've seen. You know, we've had whole days, 2-3 days where you see one little teeny tiny dugout canoe, and you imagine that that person's probably catching, 20, 50 pounds of fish at most in a day. And so for a river of this size, the fourth largest river in Africa, there's a lot of biomass. There's a ton of fish here. In Ndjole, this town here, there is no one who fishes in this zone. And it's absolutely crazy because obviously there are a lot of big fish right here, but people are buying fish from the ocean, buying fish from the delta, and transporting it here in cars rather than putting nets and hooks out here. So I've been really amazed actually with how little fishing we've seen. And I don't think that recreational or even artisanal fishing is a major threat here. I think the bigger threats are mining, dam building, and forest timber extraction in the forests. Basically, habitat alteration in the watershed, not direct impacts on the river itself.
All right. Well, Joe, our time is quickly coming to an end, but I thought I'd see if we could sneak in maybe one or two more camera classrooms. Give me a wave in your classroom if we need to visit your group again, if you've got a question queued up. So let's start with our fifth graders with Mrs. Hines.
Mrs. Hines here, and Brady has a question.
I'm Brady. Why did you start your job?
I started it because, well, I've always loved fish. I never knew that I would be here in the Ogooue rafting down this river for the first time in 140 years. I started my job because I thought fish were really cool. I liked fishing. And then I happened to join the Peace Corps when I finished my undergraduate, and I was sent to Cameroon, which is just north of Gabon here. During my time in the Peace Corps, I started to look in the rivers and in the lakes that were near where I was posted. And luckily enough, there were some really cool lakes near me. So I started sampling fish diversity in those areas. And when I was finished with the Peace Corps, I said, oh man, I need to find a way to continue doing this. So I started doing my PhD at the University of California, Santa Cruz, studying freshwater fish in Central Africa. And when I came to Gabon for the first time in 2014 and I saw this river, I said, that's what I need to study because very little is known about it. And, this is the interface. It's right on the edge between exploration, science, and conservation. So if I can do those three things at once, I feel pretty lucky. And I don't know if you can hear right now, but there are parrots flying overhead, making all sorts of sounds, and they're African grays. And they've been one of my favorite birds on the Ogooue. It's so cool. And they make all these cool vocalizations. So I don't know if you can hear them, but they're whistling above me.
Very cool, Joe. Let's bring Mrs. Place back in.
Hi. We did not know you were Dr. Cutler. We're so embarrassed that we were just calling you Joe. Accept our apologies. The students want to know, you answered a lot of their questions about becoming an ichthyologist, but they wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about how you became involved with National Geographic.
Yeah, I would love to, because, I think a lot of people see National Geographic, they think it's really cool, but they never know how to get involved with National Geographic. And it's pretty straightforward. National Geographic provides grant opportunities, not only for explorers, but also for educators. And you can apply for grant funding from National Geographic. And if they accept that, you're now a National Geographic Explorer. There are a few other ways to get involved with National Geographic, but for me as a scientist, I wrote a grant to go and study volcanic crater lakes in Cameroon, and National Geographic said, that sounds pretty cool. And so that's how I started. I got my first grant from National Geographic in 2014, and I got this grant for the Ogooue megatransect in 2018. So this is my second project with National Geographic, and it's been really a pleasure working with National Geographic. I've learned a lot. I've met so many cool people, and it's really opened my eyes to exploration. Even though I've been exploring for a while, I don't know if I was doing it right until I was a National Geographic Explorer. So if you dream about being an explorer, And if you've got an idea, some crazy idea of some cool adventure or some fun thing you'd like to do, write a grants application. And I think that that's the best way to become a National Geographic Explorer. And once you're in, it's like a big family. Everybody knows everybody, everybody likes everybody, and we all work together. So it's really been a joy getting involved with National Geographic for me. And you don't need to call me doctor. That's just a formality. You can call me Joe. That's plenty.
All right. Awesome, Joe. Let's check in quickly. Mr. Taylor's group, do you guys have another question? No pressure. We'll just need you to unmute if you do. There we go.
Do you shower?
This is where I shower, in the river. So usually we're pretty busy throughout the day. We're rafting all day. We sample until it's into the evening. And, you know, the sun sets here at about 6:30 p.m. We're done sampling probably by 7:30 p.m. And that's my window to jump in the water, soap myself from head to toe, and jump back in to wash it all off. I will say, I'm always a little afraid when I shower at night because there are 6 species of crocodile that live in the Ogooue, and there are hippos, and they come to the sandbanks at night. So every time I go into the water and I'm soaped up and I'm blind because I don't have my glasses on, I always think, man, I hope there's not a crocodile waiting for me. But yeah, we've been just bathing in the river. It's not glamorous, but at least the water's not too cold.
All right. Mr. Katz in Chicago, if you guys have a final question, we'll let you wrap things up for us.
We do. Tristan, are you there? All right, Kennedy?
Hello?
Oh, Tristan, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. How does the status and the impact, the general existence of the river impact the economy and the social structure of Gabon? How does its impact affect the country?
You know, the Ogooue crosses the whole country of Gabon. It is the most important river here. And actually, 5 of the provinces here in Gabon are named after the Ogooue River. So it is literally 70% of the country flows out of the Ogooue River. It's super important for navigation, super important for commerce, super important to move people, and super important for fishing as well. Now with dams starting to be thought about, I think it's going to be more and more important economically. But one thing that's really interesting is when you look at the history of Gabon, culture was transmitted down the Ogooue River. So when you look at the traditions, when you even look at the masks and a lot of the ceremonies, that was all transferred from the upper Ogooue down the river by the Aduma people. And now you see kind of this exchange along the Ogooue River. It's super important. And once we get down to Lambaréné, the next big town, everybody eats fish. Freshwater fish is the #1 preferred protein here. So even though they've got a lot of animals and they import a lot of meats, freshwater fish is what everybody likes to eat. So it's really important for food. It's really important for the economy. It's really important for navigation and transport. From here all the way to the ocean is navigable by motorboat. So people are taking stuff all the way from here out to the ocean. They actually float logs that they cut from the forest all the way out to the ocean from here. So, you know, even though it's a big wild river, it's super important economically and culturally here in Gabon. 54 different ethnic groups live on the Ogooue River on the main stem. So it's a really remarkable river, and it's so poorly explored, and we really don't know that much about it. So I think that there's a lot more that the Ogooue could do for Gabon, but it's already super important for the country.
All right, Joe. Very cool. Before we let you go, you can probably answer this really quick. Christoph is tuning in via Facebook and wants to know about killifish. Did you catch any yet?
No killies. They don't live in the big rivers. If we want to go out into the forest and do some poking around with dip nets, That's where we'll catch our killifish. But just until now, and everybody loves the killifish. They are literally the most beautiful fish in the whole world. My business card has a killifish on them. So I love killifish, but we've caught 0 killies on this whole expedition, including in the couple small streams that we've sampled. But our focus for sampling has been on the main stem Ogooue. So when I catch some killies, Christoph, I'll send some photos your way. Don't you worry.
All right. Well, Joe, thanks so much for today. I know we kept you a little longer than usual. There's so many classes who are following along your journey since our first event and want to stay in the loop of what you're up to. So thank you so much. Good luck tonight with your night of fishing. And we look forward to seeing where the next week or more takes you.
Yeah, thanks so much for everybody joining in. It's really an awesome opportunity to share kind of the expedition. And if you're not already following along, our Instagram site is at Africa's Last Wild River. And if you don't use Instagram, we have a web page, www.africaslastwildriver.com. And everything that we're posting on Instagram is also going up there. So we look forward to seeing you and following along. And if you've got any questions anytime, send them our way and we'd be happy to respond from the field whenever we've got connection.
All right. Awesome, Joe. Again, thanks so much. Another great, what's been a great hat trick of events as you've made your way down the river, and we look forward to the next good signal and we can do it all again.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, it's really a pleasure to be able to broadcast live from the middle of the Ogooue River.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Joe. Say hi to Megan. We're going to sign off for today.
Will do.